And we are good.
Okay, so cool. Let us get started. Yeah, it's an honor for me to run the call. Okay, so welcome to the consensus layer call number 85. Yeah, thanks for the agenda, Tim. Let's start with the first item, which is the Kiln office hours. And I will start from testing updates. Testing and shadow forks. Perry, do you wanted to give an update on that front?
Sure. So the last shadow fork we had was on Monday. That's Girly Shadow Fork 3. Since the last week, we had Girly Shadow Fork 2 and Shadow Fork 3. Shadow Fork 2 just had an equal client split, and we didn't notice any major issues. I think Nethermind was able to figure out a few issues, and Bezu as well, and maybe one or two other clients, but in general, things went okay. Girly Shadow Fork 3 was on Monday, and we replicated mainnet client split. Since then, I think the Geth team has been debugging a specific issue, but it's just affecting a subset of nodes. The network is still finalizing, and people can try all sorts of sync tests against Girly Shadow Fork 3. And just as a general announcement, Shadow Fork 1 and 2 will be deprecated later today. So please migrate to Shadow Fork 3 as soon as possible.
And what about the mainnet shadow fork?
Yeah, so I sent the configs for mainnet shadow fork yesterday on chat. The shadow fork is planned for Monday. I'm currently syncing the nodes, and the corresponding beacon chain will be launched tomorrow. Configs for everything is already on GitHub. There are boot nodes and Genesis configs, etc.
Cool. And is anybody is welcome to take part in this shadow fork?
Yeah, feel free to join. Because it's limited to Genesis validators, I'm running all the validators. But the main purpose of these tests are to, test sync. So anyone can sync up nodes and join in.
Great. And yeah, just to remind that this is the mainnet. So the disk space requirements are much higher than on Girly, right?
Yeah, definitely. You have to sync up a complete mainnet node. So I do suggest if anyone wants to join, you start now so that you have a couple of days to sync.
Do you know how big of a disk space is required for a mainnet node these days?
I think about 500-600 gigs is enough. I've provisioned 1 terabyte machines just to be safe.
Got it. Thanks.
I mean, that depends heavily on what node and what settings you're running. Like Nethermind fully pruned, I believe, is under 100 gigabytes, maybe. I mean, it's kind of rude to the network to run that way, but if you just need to run something and you don't have much space, that can work.
Agreed. Very excited to see the first mainnet shadow fork. Is there any comments on the Girly shadow forks that client developers want to make, or anybody else?
Yeah, so we're still investigating an issue on Geth that happened on the last shadow fork. And yeah, but it only happens on a small subset of nodes. So if you see a bad block happening, then you might be that might be because of the issue.
Yeah, is it like the issue is about the bad block production, or any other relations to?
No, it's a valid block will be seen as bad. And yeah, that's
Okay, I
it.
see. Yeah, probably tricky to like to debug. Okay, got it. Yeah, any other testing updates?
I just had one more tiny note about the mainnet shadow fork. Just be wary, we're using the mainnet chain ID. So if anyone's trying weird transactions, etc., they might gossip to the actual mainnet and you would be wasting mainnet ether. So please be careful. By default, there will be no transaction fuzzer running on this. I don't think anyone's reimbursing me for that.
Yeah, that's a really good note. Thanks, Barry. So be aware of that the basically shadow fork is the main shares like a state with the mainnet. So the transaction you run there may also be included in a block on the mainnet. So and made according change to what this runtime of this transaction will be. Okay, cool. I have a small testing update. Have been working on this test coverage document. Yeah, just dropped a link into the chat. There is a transition section that I have been mostly focused on recent days. And yeah, this is like a kind of the shape that this document will look like. So it's just an example. This transition section has like raw checks parsed from the engine API spec and like more appropriate testing scenarios that we might want to implement in via our testing tools. With respect to transition checklist, the work will still need to be done on other specs. So going to parse other specs and also include the information from them into these scenarios. Yeah, but you might take a look. Also, thanks a lot, Mario, for the input on that. I've made some checkboxes marked already, and with the corresponding links to Hive tests that covers them. Yeah, and for the background who haven't noticed this, it's been announced on the previous ACD call. I mean, this effort. This is literally going through all the specs and just parsing all the statements and putting all the checks that need to be done to test the merge software. Yeah, and then make it in a good shape and then go and cover these checkboxes with what already implemented via testing tooling and yeah, work on what have been missed.
I guess I can also give a quick update. I am also working on certain set of manual test cases in our GitHub tracking issues. So these are like the issues I thought of. They are like harder to trigger in a way. It's not unit testable. It's not really end-to-end testable. We don't have that today. So yeah, I'm looking for feedbacks to see if I'm missing anything here. Is anything like I should be adding? And yeah, please take a look and give us feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Terence. Do you want to share a site or whatever else you have on testing?
Yeah, so besides that, we have end-to-end test case that we are actually implementing a proxy that's sitting in the middle between the beacon node and the EE, and the proxy is able to manipulate the payload as it gets passed through. So it's kind of similar to the test case that you mentioned, but this allows us to easily get the pending status back, or sorry, seeking status back and forth, so that we can test optimistic sync more smoothly for in our end-to-end test. So we have that. I'm happy to share the progress on that a little bit later once we finish it. But yeah, really, yeah, I am really excited for all this testing stuff.
Cool. Okay, and any other testing related items? Okay, so I guess we can start with the client updates. Who wants to be first?
I can go from
Dante.
Lighthouse, break the silence. I kind of got out of the habit of preparing these updates because Danny kind of stopped, but we're working on the merge, obviously. We've got full-time person working on testing now. We're kind of dealing with mostly kind of little tidying up issues and just making sure that everything is locked down. We can't produce attestations when things are optimistic, and also trying to make sure that we that our logs kind of make sense after the merge, because we're used to kind of complaining when the execution node, F1 node, is not synced. But we need to do that less now because it's kind of our job to sync it. So yeah, just I guess probably in the tidying stage, and also testing. We've also cut a release a couple of days ago that enables proposer boost on mainnet. So our Lighthouse users are starting to do proposer boost on mainnet in production. I think the other clients are well aware of this and looking at also running it as well. That's about it from me.
And this, if one client syncing or this complaining thing is just logs, right? It's not like anything is like deadlocked or whatever. I mean the sync process.
Yeah, it's just logs. It's one of those things where it's just logs, but it turns out to be very difficult to solve. We have to do kind of a bit of a refactor. But yeah, it's just logs.
Okay, I see. Yeah, thanks for that. Bit great. And about the proposer boost, I mean, it works now on the mainnet.
Yeah, it seems to be going there. Yeah, I guess we'll see probably as more clients start to use it. We might start to see it taking effect on mainnet. Be interesting.
Yep, definitely. Great. Okay, next I have Taku.
Yeah, hi. So we also have a new hire, which is Stefan Bartanov, which is, you can see now is connected to the call. Welcome. We are working on the MEV boost integration during this last weeks. And in terms of merge, we maybe worth mentioning that we did we implemented another check in the terminal block difficulty detection, terminal block detection actually, because we were not taking in account the block timestamp coming from the proof of work. And in some cases, running some test nets, we got a terminal block, but with a future timestamp, and also due to a similar bug in Bezo, we in our acceptance tests integrated with our CI, we were hitting a bug where we are actually considering that terminal block to be good, and we were then building the next block in proof of stake with a timestamp which was before the timestamp of the terminal block. So we actually added a check. We discard the potential terminal blocks that have timestamp in the future. There are other things. Yeah, that's it.
And what is the decision on the blocks that are having timestamp in the future?
We simply don't care about that and wait maybe another block that has a timestamp which is in the past with regard with our consensus client time.
I see. Yeah, that's interesting case.
Yeah, maybe worth to mention maybe in your document as a transition test, even if it's kind of weird, but we hit that case.
Yeah, I see. Okay, let's have a more look into this. Thanks a lot, Enrico. Welcome, Stefan. Okay, next one is Lodestar.
Hey everyone, Taplion here. So we continue our merge work, all going well, no substantial issues. We have also merged substantial updates to our gossip and SSD libraries and hope to have them in a release soon. And we have also keep iterating on like client proof of concepts. And we got a technical demo where we closed the loop on the Kiln testnet, going from consensus in Altair all the way to showing execution data, and we show that in E2BY. So fun stuff. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Congratulations on that achievement. Thank you. Next is Prismatic.
Oh, hey guys. So we also have a release coming next week, and that should enable proposal boost. Really excited to see that happening on the mainnet. And then regarding the merge, we have dissolved our Kiln branch. So everything lives in our master now. So that's very nice. And then we are mainly tightening up and adding more test cases. We are fixing the last few things of optimistic syncing, such as pruning invalid nodes, deleting them from the DB, and also just making sure when the EE goes offline or when the EE times out, our beacon node handles it gracefully. And we're also working on Web3 Signer, and that's a pretty big one. It's taking up some of our time. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Terence. Okay, next one is Nimbus.
We are also in the process of integrating our merge code into the mainline branches. We are looking into integrating EMV boost in Nimbus. We are also doing light client experiments. Nimbus currently implements a custom peer-to-peer protocol for obtaining light client updates, and we are testing light client syncing in the Prater testnet. Our server is actually compatible with Lodestar, so you can also try this setup if you wish. We are also working on support for threshold signatures in the remote signer setup, such that you can configure Nimbus to operate with multiple remote signers, where each of the signer is configured to operate with a partial key. And something quite interesting, starting from this week, the Nimbus execution layer is successfully being able to participate in the Kiln testnets.
Whoa. Congratulations on that. Thanks, Harry and Grandin.
Yeah, Solus from Grandin team. So we worked mainly on small fixes for the merge, and also worked on the new feature which we didn't have for a long time, this remote Web3 signer. So that's main things. Thanks.
Thanks, Solus. Great. Okay, so we also have EL client developers on the call, and I want to give them a word to spread the updates.
Sure, I can start. We've been debugging the issue that I already mentioned, and not much more than that. That has been very hands-on.
Okay. Anything that can help you with the debugging? And probably enabling some tracing or whatever.
Not really. No, we're still trying to figure out how this can actually happen, and we don't know how. So yeah, but we're still looking into it, working on it.
Yeah, I see.
Let's
Luck
see if
with
we
that.
can find it.
Yeah, there were Yeah, the worst category of bugs is this kind of bugs which are not deterministic. Right, so yeah, good luck with that. Okay, any other client updates? Probably I have missed anyone. Okay, so since we're done with client updates, and yeah, as we're still on the merge topic, Tim, could you please give us like a quick brief walk through the decision-making process? We have touched it on the ACD, but I think it also makes sense to share it on this call as well.
The decision process.
Yeah, I mean for where we are at forking testnets and so forth.
Okay, right. Yeah. So roughly speaking, like there's a difficulty bomb on mainnet, which is set to start being felt sometime in May. And at some point we want to decide whether or not we think the merge can happen before the difficulty bomb becomes too pronounced on mainnet. And just to give some background in case it's not clear to everybody on the call how the difficulty bomb works exactly, but it's like an exponential increase which kicks in every 100,000 blocks. Basically, the amount of difficulty on the proof of work network gets like, there's a fake difficulty that's added by the difficulty bomb, making it harder to mine. So basically every 100,000 blocks or 2 weeks, like that amount gets an extra kind of chunk added to it, and that grows exponentially. It's very hard to predict exactly when it kicks in, or sorry, once it's kicked in, like once we go to a spot where the difficulty bomb goes from negligible to non-negligible addition to proof of work. It's quite hard to predict how long it takes, just because you then need to make estimates about like how much the hash rate grows or shrink in that period. And in the case of the merge, it might be the most complicated one, because we might expect that like the hash rate would drop as we get closer to the merge. That said, we can do like some rough ballpark calculations, and the last I checked, which was about a week ago, it's likely we hit roughly 15 and a half second block times sometime in July, and that by the end of July we would be up to like about 17 second block times if we did nothing. And personally, and I guess having talking with a bunch of different people, it seems like 15 second is like the maximum that's like that we can tolerate before doing something. If we go to 17, then the one after is 20, and then I think it's 25. So it starts going really quickly, and that gets noticed a lot on the network. So if we're hitting like 17 by the end of July, the one little buffer that we have is we might be able to bundle the execution client releases with a small pushback to the difficulty bomb. So if we needed like a couple extra weeks for the merge, you could have like a mini fork that happens on mainnet, which just pushes back the difficulty bomb before we hit TTD. So if we want to be like in that world where we either don't push back the bomb, or maybe push it back only slightly, but in the same release as the merge, and don't need like a whole separate network upgrade to do that, we need to be in a spot where by the last all core devs in April, which is like in 3 weeks from now, we're deciding about forking testnets. Like we don't need to like have the exact like testnet blocks and everything on that call 3 weeks from now, but we would want to be in a spot where like we're comfortable that in the next 2 weeks we're going to sort that out, and that around mid-May we start forking testnets. This assumes probably something like we fork testnets every 2 weeks, and so the first one gets like 6 to 8 weeks of like being forked, and then the last one gets more on the order of 2 to 4. And there was some kind of contentious on all core devs about if that's enough. So that's something we also need to check in parallel. But yeah, long story short, I think like late April is when we need to make a call about do we think we're ready to now move to testnets? And if not, I think it's probably the better approach at that point to just have a small upgrade on the execution layer side, which kicks back the bomb a few months, and we can debate how much we want to kick it back for.
Cool, thanks, Tim. And do I understand correctly that if we want to fork testnets in May, then we probably want to have production ready clients in the beginning of May?
Right, yeah, so that's why, like, basically the call 3 weeks from now, what you would hope clients are like ready for testnets, and that what we still need to figure out is basically, you know, putting out the release that supports the testnet, and maybe some small, you know, say there's like a small tweak in JSON RPC or something like that. That's not the end of the world, but like we shouldn't be changing consensus related code at that point. Yeah.
See, any comments on that? Okay, the silence. Yeah, just curious, what does it mean? Okay, so yeah, and we are getting back to this in 3 weeks, right? I mean, to this, to the decision on what we do next and when.
Well, I mean, hopefully, yeah. Well, like with the mainnet, I think for me personally, the mainnet shadow fork will be a really strong indicator. Like if we have the mainnet shadow fork and things go roughly the same as they went on Gordy, that's good. If they uncover a whole host of new issues, then I think it's unlikely that we're in a good spot to be ready. But yeah, so I don't think, I guess what I'm saying is, like, I don't want to just say we're gonna like table this for the next 3 weeks. Like I think we're gonna have a lot of extra information that comes in the next 3 weeks, and like on the call next week, and then in Dev Connect 2 weeks from now and whatnot. Like we can evaluate how we feel about things.
If I understand correctly,
yeah, go ahead, Mike.
if I understand correctly, you're basically saying that in 3 weeks, all clients should be prepared to answer the question, are you feature complete?
Yeah, and I think if we're not in that space, like, and you know, if we're like 95% feature complete, then there's like maybe some like wiggle room to like, do you want to do the first testnet at 95% feature complete, something? If you're like at 80% feature complete, I think in 3 weeks, and that's the case across like several clients, then I think it makes more sense to delay the bomb. And obviously it's not just my decision, but like I think that's assuming we want like a sane testnet deployment schedule and we don't want to rush them for the merge. Yeah.
Yep, makes sense. On the mainnet shadow forking, so we're expecting to have one for pretty soon, right? And we are expecting to have another one like on demand, or like on a weekly basis, or whatever. Probably Perry can answer that. Perry, what do you think on the shadow fork in mainnet? Will we have another one next week?
Yeah, the plan is to have one every second week. So we would have one on Monday, and the one after that would be, I think, the Friday on Dev Connect, like the Dev Connect week Friday. So we'd have at least 2 mainnet shadow forks, and we can still talk about another girly shadow fork if we wanted. I think doing 3 mainnet shadow forks, like at some point, it's like a point of diminishing returns. Like doing it 2 times a week might not bring us much.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
Especially when mainnet nodes take so long to sync. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay. Okay. Anything else on the like merge release timeline and related comments to what have been just discussed and shared. Okay, let's move on. There is a PR by Danny on the timeouts on the engine API calls. So it's basically set the timeout on the calls with like a big, with a pretty big enough amount of seconds for the calls that have an execution in it, execution semantics, which is the new payload and block choice updated. The other two calls has much less timeout, and the requirement is that the consensus layer must just expire the call by timeout. Yeah, so that's it, and there is a reasoning about it in the comment to the PR. So please take a look, and we're expecting inputs on that. Do you want to discuss these engine API timeouts right now? Okay, so let's just then move to the PR.
Sorry. One thing,
Yep.
Just one thing on the timeout is, does anyone feel like 120 seconds is too quick? And maybe this is more a question like for the EL side, but like the idea of like a 10x difference in execution between like the high-end hardware and the low-end hardware is kind of what the 120 second is predicated on. And so I think that's the bit of feedback, and that would be helpful, is like, is there a case for like, actually this shouldn't be 10x, but it should be maybe 20x, or maybe it should be 15x or something like that's, and it's something that's kind of easy to change as well. But yeah, I think if people have that type of feedback, it would be really good to get it now.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I'll also to add from my end on the timeout stuff. Yeah, as Danny stated in the comment to the PR, there is a point when waiting for waiting for a block to be executed by execution layer client is not valuable after some point in time. Probably it makes sense to have like timeouts as huge as the number of seconds in the epoch, because in this way the chain will be able to still make progress. The chain, I mean, in terms of consensus, of course, block supply will be significantly lower if there will be only one block per epoch, but it's still theoretically possible for the chain to make progress. So we can take a look on the timeouts from this standpoint as well. Also, another thought that I had on them, on the timeouts, is that there are two operation modes that the EL client has. It's basically syncing and block stepping. When like a node is staying in sync with the network and just receiving a block via gossip and sends it to the payload to the EL. And probably in these two different cases, timeouts should be managed like in different ways. So that's things to consider on this topic. So please take a look. It's very important because recently these timeouts appear like many times in Discord and in conversations. So it's kind of gonna be an issue if we're not being able to specify them correctly. Okay, the next thing to discuss and to remind the people about is the latest valid hash stuff. So we have touched this on ACD, and yeah, this thing is gonna be like resolved sooner than later, because yeah, we need to write tests. We need to be sure that we are on the same page with respect to this requirement in the spec. So just quick context, there is the latest valid hash that the EL client have to respond with when it has been like syncing, for example, and found that some payload in the chain that it has been catching up with is invalid. So it should respond with the latest valid ancestor hash on the next CL call. So EL will have to store some information about this chain until it receives a subsequent call from CL to be able to share this information. This is important for consensus layer clients, so it can invalidate not only the most recent payload on this chain, but also like all the invalid payloads, which is which starts after the latest valid hash that is provided. The problem here is that execution layer clients doesn't store this kind of information today, and it needs to be added and kept in memory and returned back to CL. So yeah, what I have just shared is my initial thoughts on how it could be implemented. And the main question is whether we want to support this or we would like to explore or we would like to reason about whether it's important for EL client to respond with this information while it's being syncing, or it could be kind of optional stuff. Yeah, because it's going to be there. The semantics will stay there, and the request format will not be changed because there are clients like Aragon, which may execute payloads, multiple payloads on fork choice updated, and they need this semantics to respond accordingly if this if the reorg is happening and multiple payloads are being executed and one of these payloads is invalid. So this client may immediately respond with the latest valid hash correctly without storing any information. And this is valuable and important for CL clients in this case. Yeah, but for the syncing case, it's like there is a question on that topic. So please reach us out in Discord, reach me out in Discord, comment on this document. So we are about to make a decision like early next week on that. Any questions or comments in that regard? Okay, let's move on. So we have, as long as we are on the merge topic still, and the MEV boost has been mentioned here by several developers. Like client, do you want to make an update on your recent work on the spec?
Yeah, thank you. So for context, for people who have not been following much with the Builder API or MEV Boost, this is the interface for CLs to get blocks from external builders. And it was changed from a middleware design sometime in the past few months where MEV Boost would sit between the CL and the EL and route fork choice updated and get payload calls to the builder network to a separate service that can provide blocks to the CL. And as far as I know, this was originally proposed by Paul. And so a lot of the latest pieces of the spec have been derived from his ideas. The new approach, it does require some more integration on behalf of the CL teams. So I'm curious to know how far people are on integrating those things. But the things that appear to need to be implemented with the newer spec is that, of course, you need to implement the Builder API, which right now has 3 methods: the Builder get header, Builder get payload, and Builder set fee recipient. And then there's 2 types of signing that the CLs will need to support. One is blind block signing. So they'll need to be able to sign over blocks that don't expose the full list of transactions I'm not clear on exactly how that is communicated to validator clients, if the entire data object is sent over or if just the signing root is sent over, but that's something that would need to be supported. And then they'll need to be able to support a fee recipient announcement. And we tried to make it so that fee recipient is not something on the critical path for building blocks for a few reasons. One of the most important is trying to move to a world where this is more of a gossip based approach rather than a request response approach over RPC. So the validator client needs to be able to support signing a fee recipient message, just attesting that this is the fee recipient that they wish to accept funds at. And that would be on a different domain than the normal block production and attestation signatures. And then, of course, there need to be some modifications in CL block production code to try and get a block from the external builder if the builder functionality, the external builder functionality is enabled. So the latest changes to the API are in a PR to Mev Boost, and I'll post the link here. I would really appreciate any feedback on this. We'll try and move it to the execution APIs repository sometime in the near future. But right now we're continuing just to develop it there. So that's the main update. If anybody has some feedback on that immediately, that would be great.
Any feedback
I lost
on
a little
that
bit of that
question?
just due to internet dropout, but I think the idea of changing the names to not conflict with the engine methods is a really good idea.
Great. We've also tried to simplify. Before there was a concept of like builder methods and relay methods, and we're trying to just simplify it more so that Mev Boost is a piece of software that exists out there, but the design isn't really built around it. It's just built more around the concept of retrieving external blocks, and Mev Boost is, obviously a candidate for utilizing that functionality, but you could directly connect to a builder that supports the API. Other people can implement software. It's less bound to a certain, existing implementation.
Yeah, nice. I saw there was just a little bit of chat in one of the merge discords about other MEV people getting involved. I haven't really had, I think Blocks reached out to me, but I haven't had many other people, MEV teams, reach out to me about it. Something we might want to consider is moving that API away from Flashbots and into a more perhaps neutral repository.
Right.
Not sure if that's immediately a problem, but just maybe a long-term goal to consider.
No, that's a short-term goal for me. I think, in the next few weeks, we'll try and move it to like an Ethereum repository. And I think there's just a different way we need to be approaching this. I feel like the block building like API spec is something that's just sort of lived external to a lot of the discussions around the merge. And to me, it feels like this is something that should very much be an important part of these discussions, because in all likelihood, most validators are going to be using this software. And so, we as people working on the consensus and execution layer should also be spending time making sure that that is as robust as the other pieces of software that we're working on.
Agreed.
I mean, this raises an interesting question, right? Which is that this basically becomes part of the attack surface against Ethereum, because if the networks are not able to produce blocks and clients rely exclusively on them as sources, we have a problem, right? So one thing would be to almost require that clients implementing this feature would also implement a fallback where they make sure to have a block ready from our traditional sources as well. And this is important both for censorship reasons then, and just network down reasons, right?
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's critical that the two things that are critical is that if the builder gives you a payload, you use your EE to verify it, you don't just assume that it's valid or use it to verify it. So that's kind of a bit of a correctness guarantee. And then, like you said, Jacek, the one that if they don't give us anything or it's invalid, we do have another block to pick up. I think those are probably the two key safeguards we can use here. It wouldn't stop the builders from causing havoc, but hopefully it would keep the chain correct and live.
Well, but we can't do that, right, with the blinded block because we don't have the transactions.
Can't do what, sorry?
We can't verify a blinded block like that. The transactions therein are valid.
Right. So with the current design, the builder is a separate entity. So you'd have
Paul, you're muted.
I think you disconnected.
Yeah, I also agree on that. And it probably makes sense to have an accompanying document for CL client employers on how to integrate MEV Boost in their software with the fallbacks and other stuff. What all has been mentioned, and Jacek. Also, yeah, if there is a builder who produces bad blocks that are invalid, I guess there are gonna be a reputation system to quickly sort this out, and just MEV Boost won't be connected to this kind of builders. Am I right?
Well, I think I don't think a reputation system necessarily works. Reputation system, lots of problems because you're reputable until you're not. And I think the attack, yeah.
I was gonna say it only works if you can attribute the fault to a builder. Like if I can create some sort of proof that shows that they told a validator that for some slot they would produce a block based on this input, and then they produce a block based on a different input, then we could attribute to the builder, and then we could say like this proof would cause other validators to disconnect from them, removing them from that, and that could protect from some instances. But I think the worst case is if the builder simply withholds the block that they tell a validator they're going to release, and there's no way of attributing that fault to the builder.
Yeah, indeed. There are a number of these like liveness issues, right? Where, I don't know, a couple of blocks, invalid blocks get produced in a row with no way for the signer, like the validator, to really validate whether they're valid or not before signing and so on.
Right.
I think from our perspective, the important question should really just be like, where do we draw the line between responsibility for like the MEVs systems, like dashboards or whatever systems, and the Bastion, right? Because there's like small issues I think we should just not be concerned with. Like it's up to the user to decide whether to run the client, and if so, then like how well that protects against, I don't know, griefing or whatnot. Like that's all I think not really our concern, but of course it becomes our concern. And like if there's like a big failure where we really want to be able to notice that and switch over manually, maybe even just disregard the MEV boost or something. And so the question is just like basically where should that kind of this emergency disregard MEV fallback kick in? I think, yeah, because otherwise it shouldn't be our concern.
Right. I think like a reasonable expectation is one for CL clients to implement a fallback mechanism where they do continue requesting their local EL to build a block, and that will protect from whenever the fault is attributable. And you can see that there is an issue with the block that you're trying to propose, and you could just propose the local one that you build. And then the fallback mechanism for these other types of liveness issues could just be if we haven't seen a beacon block come with an execution payload and in number of blocks, to just disregard builder blocks until some threshold is met again, just so that we avoid these like really bad situations where we're going, epochs without any kind of actual block being produced.
Right, but even that is hard, right? Because you don't actually, if you just look at the beacon chain, like you don't know whether a payload you're looking at actually came from the MEV network or not. So if you just have the threshold of saying like, if there hasn't been a valid payload in 10 blocks, then sure, after 10 blocks of just no payload or an invalid payload, you'd have one valid payload, but then manually created MEV, but that would then basically trigger the next 10 blocks to just try to use MEV again, which wouldn't work. Because it would always oscillate, right? Because it wouldn't actually know whether the things were coming from the valid MEV network or just from people manually using their clients. So it's not easy to.
Right. I mean, yeah, I think these are all hacks to sort of try and maintain liveness and not an optimal system for dealing with the fact that we have centralized block producers and that we need to continue working towards having an end protocol mechanism for dealing with these situations.
Sure, but as long as we have these hacks, sorry, we should try and make the hacks work as well as possible, at least, right? Is there any way to at least say have some sort of flag where we would at least, whenever we see payload, see whether that was produced by an external builder or by the validator himself or something?
I mean, hopefully we'll be able to get more information whenever we switch to more of a gossip approach to external builders rather than right now directly connecting to them. That way you as a member of that gossip network could potentially see that these payloads were coming from a builder. But again, this doesn't protect from if the builder is withholding.
Yeah, definitely. There are
Can we
cases
just
in that.
request that all clients can we just request that all clients put something in the graffiti that if they're using a builder versus local? I mean, it's obviously not enforceable, but defaults are very powerful, and we probably get 99% of people to go along with it if it's just default.
Sure. I don't know how deep we want to go into this discussion right here, but I do feel like it's something that we might want to consider talking about more and being like more conscious about this situation.
I also find like there's no representative, there's no one from Flashbot here. I feel like this would be maybe better. I think the better place for this type of discussion is probably like bi-weekly having a sync up with the Flashbot team and then just to go over the spec.
What do you think is the best format for that? Is it like a call that's hosted by Flashbots?
Right. So last week we had one on the Flashbot working group Discord, and the Leo from the Flashbot hosted it. So I'm not sure when the next one is, but I think they're planning to do this quite I think they're planning to do this quite frequently.
I think if our goal is to make this less Flashbot centric and more open to Flashbot competitors, we should perhaps start by just having someone else host the meetings, like Ethereum Foundation or whatever.
Right, and I guess the reason I'm asking is like, is this a Flashbots meeting or is this like a general like block builder meeting? Because I think one of the reasons Flashbots doesn't send people to say Alcor devs and stuff, aside from maybe having better things to do, is there is like this fear, like they don't necessarily want to be, I don't know, taking up the time and like space in the core protocol stuff for their like private stuff, but it does overlap. And I think, they've been mindful of like how how to like manage this interaction. But yeah, so if it makes more sense to have it as like a EF thing, we can probably do that. The question is also then like, how do you make sure you don't just overload people with meetings, because there's like Alcor devs consensus layer, Flashbots call, or MEV call.
Yeah, I don't know if it makes sense to have something similar to what we've been doing with ACDs, having those breakout room calls for more specific topics.
Yeah, I think
because this is something that's important to all CLs, but there's usually like one person from a CL who's representing and working on that area.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and like, especially having at least, it doesn't have to be like a recurring thing forever as well, right? Like it could be just like we have a couple and we see how if we need it, if we need to make it more more frequent.
Yeah. And I have been working very closely with Flashbots on this the past few weeks. And like, I have also generally been pushing to avoid enshrining anything related to Flashbots into these concepts, including removing the term MEV from any of these like APIs. Like, I don't think that any of these things should be as like that opinionated. We're just working with an external block building protocol, not Flashbots itself, and that should be done in an open arena.
I'm mindful there is like DevConnect 2 weeks from now, but do we want to schedule like either next week a Flashbot or an MEV breakout, or maybe wait to see, like I know there is like an MEV event at DevConnect. I know the Flashbots people will be there. Most of the client teams will be there as well. So do we want to like wait and see if there's just like organic interactions that happen there, and then kind of follow up after DevConnect?
Yeah, probably people will be busy next week with travel and some other stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely okay. I can make sure that like we touch on it in person there, and then that like after DevConnect we organize something that's open where we can discuss this.
Great. Yeah, before the call in the DevConnect, please go to this PR, take a look at Rails simplification, and this design is like sets a pretty optimal separation of concerns. Thanks, like client, for the work on it. And yeah, this is very important, as it's been mentioned, as the component of the system. So the more eyes we have on it, the better for the end goal, for the end design. So go take a look and comment out. Anything on that topic before we move on? Okay, anything else merge related? Cool. Next step is other client updates. We had a bunch of updates already, but probably somebody wants to share anything else not related to the merge. Okay. The next one is research, spec, and other things. There is, and from what I know, there is an ongoing work on partial withdrawals and the withdrawals in general. Alex, do you want to give any update on that?
Sorry, you're asking about partial withdrawals?
Yep, I mean the withdrawals in general.
Yeah.
Partial withdrawal.
Yeah, not too much other than the PRs. Danny's been looking at this from the CL perspective, so he'd have the most context here. Yeah, I mean, I guess just anyone on this call, if you're curious, take a look. The changes are, I think, not too wild. And yeah, as far as I know, the latest there is just tuning some of these parameters around like how frequently we cycle over the validator set to either do sort of the full withdrawals, or I guess in this case, the partial withdrawals. So yeah, I would just take a look. But I think there's not anything there that's, there shouldn't really be any like big open questions or anything like that.
Cool. Thanks, Alex. And yeah, when do you think when it is expected to get merged?
I don't know. It's definitely not, the top priority because we're all focused on the merge. But maybe in like 2 weeks. I mean, I'm just making up a number. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So it's gonna be soon. Then, Cred, do you want to say something? Oh, okay.
Oh no, sorry,
okay.
I just rejoined.
Oh, I see. Okay, cool. Yeah. Anything on withdrawals? Questions, comments? Okay, cool. a look on the PR. Some of like the initial PR has been already merged into the dev branch, so specs are there. Also worth checking, and the IPs as well. Nice, great. So yeah, anything else on research and spec topics? Okay, I want to remind that we have a couple of PRs in the networking, to the networking spec, and we are expecting more input from engineering side. Yeah, please take a look at these PRs. It shouldn't take like much of your time. I know that everyone is busy with the merge and other stuff. So, but these are reasonable changes to the networking spec. And yeah, please take a look, comment out, approve, and so forth. Yep. One of them is the deprecation of the step parameter in beacon blocks by range, and the other one is ignoring subset aggregates. Any comments on these two? Okay, cool. So it seems like we're done with research and spec stuff. The next one is open discussion, closing remarks. Does anyone have any other updates, announcements want to share here? Okay, so we are going to cancel the next consensus layer call because we will be meeting in person on the Dev Connect. So the next one is not gonna happen. We'll meet each other in this room like 4 weeks after. Okay, I think we are done.
Yeah, one quick thing though. So the next CL call is 4 weeks from now, but in 3 weeks, so the week after, or sorry, well, next week there is an Encore Devs, and then 2 weeks after that there will also be, so the week before and after Dev Connect, and we'll obviously cover all the merge stuff there too. So consensus layer folks who are working on the merge, please show up to those if you can.
Thanks, Tim. And yeah, from Light Client, we use block production channel on Discord to discuss the MEV boost and other builder API stuff. Okay. Okay. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.
Thanks,
guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Thank
you. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.